Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris J, and we are chatting. It is time to talk about Saturn. Saturn is entering Aries. This is happening on May 25th. Now, this is not happening in isolation. Saturn has been journeying. As I'm making this, it's still in a very close conjunction with the dwarf planet Ceres. Ceres has moved into Aries mid-May, May 16th, and Saturn then follows on May 25th. So it is important right away to note that Saturn is making this grand entrance with Ceres, the Earth Mother. And of course, who is there waiting for Saturn to enter Aries is Neptune. This is the first dip here to start feeling into this major shift that we are experiencing with Saturn. It's also really important to say right away that this is part of a much bigger process unfolding. All in all, we are journeying with Saturn, moving through this threshold from Pisces into Aries through February 2026, because Saturn will go retrograde. It's going to go retrograde in July, and it's going to station back into Pisces. It's going to go back to 25 degrees of Pisces. And why don't I just give you the facts and the dates now, and then it's going to station direct at the end of November 2025 and start moving forward. And then it's going to enter back into Aries in February of 2026, and that is when we will have the exact conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. They're going to be very close dance partners as we're leading up into Saturn's retrograde, because they're both in the early degrees of Aries, but they're not going to actually conjunct until February 2026. So that is all important because it really contextualizes that we be in process. And the shifts that we're talking about are massive. They're very big shifts. And I just want to start feeling into what this shift of Saturn coming into Aries can feel like, can bring up in especially a practice of self-inquiry on a journey of spiritual opening and healing. And is really big. And I did do a talk, I know a lot of you have seen that talk that I did with Antoinette on Saturn and the reclaiming of the ancient bone mother lineage of Saturn that patriarchy really silenced. And we're right now talking about Saturn coming into a new cycle around the zodiac, and that happens conjunct Neptune. This is an incredible time for the birthing of new myths, especially in your soul journey. This is potentially coming into a moment where that moment is, of course, timeless, because it's stretching and it's nonlinear and it's stretching us through into February 2026. When our souls are able to accomplish, open to, believe in, embody stories that simply weren't possible before. And it's happening now, like literally now, because as I'm making this, we're in the last 10 or so days of Saturn in Pisces. And this time period, this shift of Saturn from that final degree of Pisces into the beginning of its stage in Aries is such a potent time. It's such a time to witness and feel in what is emerging for you, what is just coming up, what's just showing up, who's just showing up, what memories are surfacing, what's happening in dream world, what thoughts are reoccurring, what new thoughts are reoccurring. Maybe you start thinking, oh, I'd really like to take a course and learn more about fill in the blank. And maybe that's something that's been there all along, or maybe it's kind of new. And this is a time when new parts of the self are going to be actively coming up. And On the one hand, that is wonderful because there is incredible healing jumps, evolutionary jumps. There is incredible healing potential. It also can be confusing. It also can be at times disorienting, especially because Neptune is part of the story. And especially now, as Saturn is moving through these final degrees of Pisces, and as we're just getting rolling with Saturn in Aries, it also involves a breakdown. And it involves a breakdown of the structures by which your whole sense of self has been ordered, has been aligned. And this is going to involve where you are right now in your journey, how that interacts with the stories that you grew up in your family of origin, in your intergenerational lineages, and how that intersects your life through social circles, social systems, and of course, what's happening right now in the world. It's a lot. And Saturn coming into Aries. Now, this is part of Saturn's cycle, which is roughly approximately 29 to 30 years. So on the one hand, Saturn is just ready to make another journey around the zodiac. And every time we have that archetypal shift of an archetype starting a new journey, that literally is a new embodiment of that archetype for collectives and us on our individual journey. But this is not just any new cycle. This is a cycle that's happening in conjunction with Neptune and also Ceres in this beginning stage. And Ceres is an important player. And so just recalling that Ceres is the Earth Mother. She was the mother of Persephone. And she has a lot to do with our embodiments of what it means to nurture ourselves, of how we grieve, of how grieving is a natural part of life and love. She also is unconditional love and unconditional care. She is very, very powerful. She is the Earth Mother. And she is here with Saturn in the beginning. And she moves into Aries on the 16th and then comes into her conjunction with Neptune a little bit later, a few days later. And then Saturn makes its entrance on the 25th. Now, as Saturn is making that entrance, in order for Saturn to move through those final breaths of Pisces, it's incredible breakdown. And it is one of these moments, that final, we were talking about this in my Cosmic Rhythms group, there's no way around it. The final breaths of Pisces are as deep as it gets. They are as deep as it gets. They are everything that there is. And when we have the archetype there, it's Saturn's archetype that we're embodying. Meaning that this is potentially very deep grief. And this literally is Saturn as the structures that we've understood life up to this point, beginning to, in its own cycle, collapse, deconstruct. And then it comes into this journey with Neptune through the first 2 degrees of Aries. And then Neptune will station retrograde, and then Saturn will station retrograde, and they'll move back into Pisces. Saturn will go back to 25 degrees of Pisces. So what we've been journeying through in this past little while, there's going to be themes that whatever's breaking down now, whatever we're working with, there's various stages of it, and Saturn's going to come back. It's not over. We haven't figured it all out. We don't need to figure it all out. We actually don't need to figure anything out, because this energy is so much bigger than anything that our mind can understand. And what it is, however, signaling is the archetypes. And there is something about right now, unconditional love, forgiveness, compassion, nurture, on very deep and wide scale, rippling out through oceanic waves because that Pisces energy of Saturn and Ceres there is what flows and births Saturn coming into Aries, primal fire. And this, when Saturn's in Aries, this is about you. This is about you coming into new embodiments, new structures, new alignments for how you understand yourself, for how you embody yourself, for how we all feel passion and desire that courses through our blood. And it is happening with Neptune, who is there, it's completely dissolving. Literally, part of how we've made sense of our lives. And that, of course, and Neptune is there, and Saturn, they both speak also to collective journeys. And of course, what's going on in the globe, collectives, the communities that we're part of, that's all going to impact and influence and help restructure, in some ways, our purpose. In Aries, it's the birthing of purpose. And this is a new birthing. And that's why it is a time for us as humans collectively coming into the birthing of new myths, of new embodiments of spirituality, of new ways of holding and receiving and giving love and compassion for ourselves and for others, of organizing societies. Imagine that. Imagine organizing societies around compassion and love. I'm just getting such, I don't know, maybe there's some Starhawk fans out there, because I like every time I start imagining certain communities, I always go into the fictional world that Starhawk created, which also had a character named Madrona. And that world and the tree Madrona, the merging of them, all of that was so big in my own healing and kind of early journeying into spirituality. But her book and the world that she creates is, this little pocket of society that is connected to earth, that is driven by compassion, that allows there to be leaders, but they're leaders that are organizing with and coming with. And, and for those that are in education, I know we have a lot of educators out there too, or philosophy. There's the Brazilian philosopher Paulo Freire, who wrote about this idea of the pedagogy of the oppressed, and his view of leaders as people who do not lead from power over, but connect within themselves, because there is a healing process within oneself, and all oppressive regimes and histories of power over, and then working with community, become part of community and still have leadership. That's Aries. That's that Aries fire that's able to be that sign of the zodiac moving forward, having that courageous step forward. But here, driven by potentially, this is the potential. This is what the archetypal potential is birthing for us. And this is the leader of your own life. Driven by love and a spirituality that is ready to come through in this plane. And this is literally redefining the structures of reality. So when Neptune has to make sense in the structures that we've created as in a mainstream Western paradigm, it is very complicated, and part of the Neptunian realm simply doesn't fit in the boxes that we've created. This is an opportunity to get rid of those boxes and find new ways of living our own embodied lives in spirit and fire, and that having a social level as well. And it's going to be messy. Think about all that dissolving. And it's already here, because that's what the final degrees of Pisces really allow. And then it's birthed. And then we know birth is messy and also painful. And yet there's new life. There's that baby screaming using its new lungs. There's the mother feeling a new relationship with this child that has been in the womb. There's loss of what was. And there's moving forward with what is. And Ceres is here literally acting as a midwife for Saturn to come through. And we also have new embodiments of the fire element. Fire that is able to work with soul, because fire relates to soul and spirit, in new intuition coming through. And again, that's most likely going to involve the new myths that we can create for ourselves that are not aligned to power over ideologies, that are not aligned to the fear of Aries. When Aries is acting out of fear, it can go into a warrior type mode that isn't suited to the particular environment that it's in. But when Aries is acting out of fear, it doesn't necessarily have the ability to see beyond what it's feeling. And if it's driven by fear, then it just wants to survive. And Aries is pretty good at surviving. But the piece here is that fear-driven mode is what we do not need to bring forward. It doesn't mean that there's not place for fear, and it doesn't mean that everything is perfect. By no means is everything perfect. It means that we're coming into new opportunities in which to relate to ourselves, understand our own spiritual journeys, and therefore relate to the world, relate to others, and how we want to bring our primal fire and desire through. And remember Venus. Venus made this journey first. Venus had her retrograde through Aries and Pisces. And we have been on a journey with Venus, rebirthing what desire means, what our values mean. We've done so much work there on a very personal level. And she moves on in her journey as now we have Saturn and Ceres working with Neptune in that same area, in that same arena, so that rebirthing of desire now can get embodied and can get put forth into the world and in our relationship with ourselves, because Ceres is also always about reparenting ourselves, and then also how that's going to go out into, if you are a parent, how you carry yourself with your children, regardless of what age they are. But Ceres is important for reparenting ourselves, showing ourselves the unconditional love, the unmet needs. And in Aries, we can face those unmet needs, especially during this last week of May, these first few weeks of June, meet those unmet needs and just hold space for the desire. And also fulfill them in ways that we can now at this stage in our life. And sometimes that's just witnessing that still longing and grief that's there because some need didn't get met. And as we witness that, then we're witnessing that with love for ourselves, for the versions of ourselves that we've been. Also potentially, if it's for parents or caretakers or teachers or any authority figure, because that is where we've usually learned about Saturn, recognizing those figures' unmet needs and why they probably couldn't give us what we wanted because they didn't have it. And they got taught, especially if we're going generations back, probably pretty unhelpful things about how to show up in the world and perform and be tough. And that's all often associated with Saturn. And when we let go of what is a power over rooted in patriarchal understanding of identity and success and power, and come into Saturn as the keeper of time, that is aligned to that bone mother that walks through winter, that weathers the harshness of this reality because it is harsh. Saturn knows that harshness, but it relates to it in a way that is one with natural cycles of life and death and what we can know and not know and understand and embody. And when we are moving more from what is an earth-based wisdom, which is Saturn, especially as it is connected to Capricorn. We're coming into a whole new embodiment of Saturn in Aries. No other way to say it. This is incredibly powerful fire witch. That archetype of the healer and spirit and fire that's flowing through us all, that is creating new myths for your soul journey. Myths that are embodied, that are living myths. These are not ancient myths that we're trying to replicate. These are living myths being birthed through your life, through the artwork that is your life, the creative impulse. Aries is the birth of that creative impulse, and Saturn is coming into Aries. So we are looking at whole new structures, and it is going to be experiential, and is going to be process oriented, and is going to be non-linear. Neptune sees to all of that, as does Aries. And so this is not a time for trying to just understand and you know, of course we need some of that understanding. We need to show up when we need to show up, but it's a wonderful time for cultivating spiritual practice. It's a wonderful time for leaning into spiritual practice in new ways, for leaning into creativity in new ways, and just seeing what unfolds as we journey through this mighty, mighty threshold. So with that, I am going to leave you, and I will see you soon. And it is big moments, and we are doing our best. Okay, sending lots of love. See you soon. Bye-bye.